True underdog. Unleash the power within.
Jayson Waller here, true underdog. If you're not a subscriber yet, click subscribe. You're going to love the shows. You're going to love the nuggets that we get you. We've got a YouTube channel, True Underdog. You can go to trueunderdog.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Check it out. I have got a special guest today. Super excited. Gold medal champion Dan Jansen, who has won. He was a speed skater for the U.S. Olympics, won 94 and set the world record. Lives in Mooresville, North Carolina. How you doing, Dan?
Great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm excited to have you. So you're the first Olympian I've had on the show,
Right.
And super excited about that. I was reading some of your history. I remember growing up in the 90s. We talked about it a minute ago. You were on the Kellogg's Cornflakes cereal box. And, you know, you've had an interesting story, not only before you got into speed skating and winning, but even after and some of the things you've done. And so, you know, I want to jump right in. Basically, let's talk about the speed skating first. I mean, I'm seeing you have, is it 8 world records that you did?
Yeah, it's got 8 world records. A lot of, I mean, it won, 46 World Cup races and World Championships and overall World Cup titles. But and then 1994 was my Olympic gold medal, which was kind of the story, long awaited. I should have had one or 2 or 3 way before that, but it happened when it happened.
You know, that's what I was reading about. The quotes here on this thing I'm reading about you says, if anyone deserves a gold medal, it must be Dan. Jansen's victory is important for the whole sport. It's important because it shows us that the world is fair, that if you try and never give up, you can get a gold medal. The world and the sport would be unfair if he hadn't won. I mean, that's as true as it gets right there, right? All these records waiting for that.
You know what's cool about that? That quote is from a Norwegian skater that I skated against. So it's pretty cool to hear him say that.
That's what it says. Adney Sondrell, yep,
Yes.
who competed against you in 94 Olympics.
Yeah.
That is cool. I mean, I just got chill bumps. Think in today's world with things going on the way they are and we're trying to make the world a better place, to see that you can go to games like this and compete against somebody and they show you that much respect to comment and say that is really awesome and unique. I mean, that we're not really great at ice skating. You would agree? Like the U.S. that's not our pet peeve, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some success through the years, but you know, lately it's been not as much. But you know, I think it says a lot about the respect that he and a lot of skaters had for me and my story, which I guess we're going to get into. But you know, more so, that's what to me the Olympics are about, and that's why they're so special. Is because every athlete there goes through their own story just to get there. And, you know, there's just a handful that end up fortunate enough to win medals, but everybody there is sacrificed and had some tough times along the way.
Well, that's what I'd like to ask you. I mean, let's start, tell us about Dan Jansen. I know you grew up in Wisconsin, and right as we're getting ready to get started, I'm a diehard Lions fan. Please tell me you're not a Packers fan.
Can't tell you that, my friend.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let that one go. All right, yeah. Tell us about that, Dan, about growing up in Wisconsin and getting into speed skating.
Yeah, so I grew up in a suburb of Milwaukee, and the youngest of 9 children. So I had 8 older brothers and sisters, and for me, it's all I ever knew. It was awesome. You know, I just always had somebody to look up to learn from, to chase, whether it was on the ice or off the ice or play against. But as I said, more so to learn from. And then as I grew older, to be supported by. And as I started going through my career, I went further than any of them did in skating. My next oldest brother was quite good, a couple world championship teams with me, but I made 4 Olympic teams and really played all other sports growing up, though. I was a pretty good athlete, baseball and football. By the time high school came, I kind of had to make a decision, and I decided, skating's where I wanted to go. I don't know if you're an Olympic fan at all, but a man by the name of Eric Heiden. Mm-hmm. Eric Heiden, maybe the greatest performance in Olympic history in 1980 in Lake Placid, overshadowed a little bit by the hockey team, by the Miracle on Ice.
Yep.
But Eric won 5 gold medals. We only had 5 races, everything from 500 meters to 10,000 meters. and everything in between. It's just, it's like Usain Bolt winning the 100 and the 10,000 and the 800 and the 15. It's unbelievable. So Eric was skating at the same rink I skated at. He kind of became a hero, but I saw him do that when I was 14, and then I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics. I had no dreams yet of a medal, but that's when the Olympic dream began.
So setting the goals, I mean, I talk about it, in life and business and relationship. You said around 14, you said, I want to do the Olympics, but you said a medal wasn't in sight yet. And I think that's important for listeners and viewers to understand that it's okay to have long-term dreams or hopeful goals, but you got to set those goals one step at a time. And yours was, hey, I'm going to do this in high school. I'm going to try to make the Olympic team. It wasn't winning gold medals or breaking records, right? I mean,
no, exactly. I mean, you look, and maybe that's you put it well. I think dreams and goals can be two different things. A dream is something maybe you just think about. When it becomes a goal is when you start to really work toward that. And for me, long term and short term are two different things. And you got to realize where you are at that point in your career, your talent level, all of that, and then you start setting short term goals along the way. You kind of want to know what that long term goal is and remember it, but you don't have to necessarily think about or look at that one every day. Set the shorter term goals along the way, and then those are the ones you take day to day, maybe week to week.
No, I love that. And so did they have a speed skating team? I mean, I grew up in Arizona. There was no such thing as ice skating. And I lived in North Carolina, and there's not much there either. But did they have speed skating in Wisconsin in high school, or were you going to like travel competition type teams?
Yeah, so no teams or anything in school. But so by luck, I guess, I grew up in a town, as I said, a suburb of Milwaukee. It's called West Allis. And at the time, now there's still only 4, technically 5, but at the time there was exactly one speed skating oval. I say artificial, like a refrigerated oval in the United States, and it was in West Allis, Wisconsin. And so 2 miles from my home, there was a big club, and there were clubs because that track was there. There were clubs all around the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota. And we would travel weekends to, race the other clubs. And most of the time they were coming to there because of the oval was there. But that was, certainly for me a case of, the proximity of where I grew up lending itself to me getting as good as I did.
So you finally made the Olympic team. Tell us about that. I mean, in 84, you did 84, 88, 92, and 94.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you have to overcome adversity? Was there some failure? I always try to tell people, like, at least in my life, there was no book. There was no secret sauce of, hey, to be successful or to do things, here's the exact map. You got to evolve and do your own map. But you every day, I have some kind of failure. Every week I have something that I can learn from. What were some of those failures as you started to make that Olympic team?
Well, so early on, it would be more so just the small things, maybe injuries that kept you out or things like that. But I'll say that I had early success, and I say for my age. So I made my first Olympic team when I was 18 years old. So that dream came true, that goal was reached. And it was after that for my career, that I don't necessarily like the word failures, but the
struggles.
Yeah, there you go. The struggles came because that first Olympics, I got 4th place. I almost won a medal, but medal wasn't even really a thought yet. It was just, enjoy these games. This is amazing. You made it here. And I almost came home with a medal. Well, the next 3 Olympics, then the struggles began. And specifically my second games in 1988, a year before that, I came home from practice one day, and my brother and my dad were sitting in the living room on the couch, and I could tell there were tears in their eyes, and I'm like, what is going on? Well, my brother said, my dad said Jane has leukemia. My sister Jane was the youngest of my 5 sisters. She was still 5 years older than I. And she just gave birth, was still in the hospital after giving birth to her 3rd baby girl. And they noticed her platelets were low, and they diagnosed her with leukemia. And from that point on, so then the story kind of began, because I'm at that point a year away from my 2nd Olympics. Now I'm one of the best in the world. I'm going into my 2nd Olympics as a favorite for gold. And then Jane struggled with this for just about a year. And, coincidentally, the very morning of my first race at the Olympics in 1988, she passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that. I read some of that. How old was she?
She was 27. She was 26 at diagnosis and passed at 27. So
young, just gave birth to a 3rd child.
Yeah,
wow. And how old were you? You were like 22?
I was 22, and really a tough time in my life. I was, at the top of the world in my sport, going into an Olympics with the possibility to win gold, yet not even knowing if that was important, watching Jane fight her fight and ultimately losing her battle and leaving her husband and 3 babies. And so it really, takes the perspective and just flips it, and I always had pretty good perspective because my mom and dad were great. They were great teachers, great parents, and they taught us, do your best, and that's all you can do. But this was a different one, literally seeing her lose her battle. And then, so I went out that night. I tried to skate. First of all, we had a little family meeting. What should I do? Should I come home? Should I,
I mean, you're 22 years old. I mean, I know you're in the Olympics, but you're still a kid.
Well, that's the thing. And, the more that I look back on it afterwards, I realized that there's no handbook for this. Nobody had really ever gone through that before. I didn't know what to do. So, we just talked as a family, and we said, look, what would Jane want you to do and we knew as soon as we asked that question, we knew what the answer was. If I would have pulled out, gone home, she would have felt so bad. She was a super sensitive person, and she just would have, felt responsible for me not, skating in the games. And so I went out and skated, and the first turn, very first step into the first turn, I fell. I was just kind of your mind being one place and your body being another. And I was down. And then 4 days later in the 1,000 meters, my 2nd race, leading with a half lap to go, and I fell again. And so it was more, it was like, what more can possibly happen to our family at this point? And at that point, I was like, all right, now I got to get out of here. Now I need to go home, and now I need to properly say my goodbyes, and so that was, certainly one of the most challenging experiences of my life, and it remains so to this day.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, and I appreciate you sharing it. I know you have before, and I've seen, I think they made a movie or documentary on it, correct? And
yeah,
story.
Well, actually, yeah.
What was that like? I mean, that is a struggle that I can't even imagine how you were able at 22 to be able to go out there. I know that's the right thing. She wants you to go out there. You go out there. You were leading the race. I may have fell during, I don't know how my brain could have handled that. So I think that says something of how your parents raised you and how tight your family was, and that you had that in there. But for any 22-year-old kid, best in the world or not, to have to deal with that weight, that pressure on your shoulders on top of competing in a world event where the world's watching you is hard. So after that, and you went back and you guys are picking up the pieces and trying to regroup as a family, you go to the 92 Olympics. What happens?
So 92, even to this day, is a little puzzling because 4 great years in between, and now I'm starting. So 2 weeks before those games, I set my first world record, and going in there favorite again. It was basically that season, in the 500 meters anyway, was my best race. And myself and my friend from Germany, former East Germany, we were battling all season 1, 2, back and forth. And it was kind of going to be a showdown at the Olympics. And then 2 weeks before, I set a world record, and we go to this little town in Italy to kind of prepare, and before we headed to France. And I thought, well, I'm still training, right, hard, and I set a world record. So now, when we rest, we're really going to be flying, because then your body recovers and you start. I think we overdid it on the rest, and I just got flat. And I went into Albertville, felt okay, but during the race, it was just didn't have any oomph, any power, and I got 4th again. And so, two of the guys had never beaten me before and had no business beating me, but they did. They beat me that day. And so, that 4th felt way different than the one in my first Olympics, because this one I should have won, and that one I was just happy to be there. But it was 4th nonetheless. And so now, again, 3 Olympics had gone by, and I've got no medal. And, if you kind of ask anybody in our sport the last 50 years, would Dan Jansen be going into, coming out of his 3rd Olympics without a 500-meter medal, they would have said it's impossible. And yet, and there I was. And so I had 2 years, because now, I don't know if you remember, they used to hold the winter and summer games in the same year.
Yep.
So then they decided they were going to stagger them. So we had 2 more years. We get 94 coming. I pretty much had made the commitment that I'm sticking around. I'm going to do this. My coach was with me, and we had 2 unbelievable years, the best I had ever had. More world records in the 500. 1,000 meters now is starting to get better, which was a big goal of mine for a long time, because I was super strong in the 500 and the 1,000 meters. I had what it took, but mentally I kind of wasn't there in that race. I didn't have the belief, basically. So the 500 meters comes in Lillehammer, Norway. So 1994, by the way, for the listeners, if you don't remember my story, or Bonnie Blair, it's the same year as the Nancy and Tanya thing. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. That pulled a lot of juice from that, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, which also made it the most watched, not Olympics, the most watched sporting event in the history of television were the 94 Olympics. So they brought in a lot of viewers, but for the wrong reasons. And so the 500 meters comes. Now, I had never been skating better. I had never been more on top of my game. I had never been more favored. I had the 5 fastest times in history were all mine in the 500. Get off to a good start. By the way, it's February 14th. It's Valentine's Day. It's the 6-year anniversary of Jane's death. Just, to add to everything. But get to the last turn, and maybe I pushed a little too hard in the beginning of the turn, and I slipped. And I didn't fall, but I slipped and lost all my speed and all my momentum. And doing that in a race that's, decided by tenths or hundredths of a second is going to cost you a medal. And so it did. So now I've got 4 Olympics of my race. The 500 are gone, and I've got no medal of any color. Absolutely impossible, yet reality for me. And that's when I think my biggest fight with myself that I ever had, in terms of drawing that line between literally giving up or realizing that, look, I literally had a conversation with myself. I'm like, I know now what everybody's thinking. I couldn't handle the pressure or whatever.
And that's a lot of pressure. I don't mean to interrupt you, but think about it. The world's looking at you. They're commenting, and we don't have social media, thank God. Back then,
you're right. But I would have gotten vilified.
Right. Yeah, but that's all they're talking about. And I remember and they're here you are. It's the anniversary. Your best race. You just failed. Yeah. And that weight, that is like, you're at the crossroads. Am I done, or am I going to give it all? What am I going to do? Right. Yeah, exactly. And now also top it off, the 1,000 meters, as most people know, was not my best race. The 500 was, and that was gone. But the way I looked at it is that, look,
I know, like I've been doing this a long time. I know how I'm skating. I know how I'm feeling physically, and also how it's translating to the ice. I'm flying out there, and just because I had a slip, one little slip, doesn't mean that I'm not on top of my game. And so I can do this. Like I had this. There was this belief down there, that I still had, and thank goodness, and so there were 3 tough days in between those 2 races, and really tough, but my family was there, and my little daughter, Jane, who I named after my sister, and she was just 8 months old. So it was great. I could just watch her crawl around and play with her on the floor and kind of forget about the ice until I was at the track. And then, and then race day came, and it was, man, it was a day to remember. Even that day, you talk about when did the lessons end? And they really don't ever end. Like, I'll give you 2 examples on race day itself. Get out for warm up, as opposed to the 500 meters, my warm up, I felt so good. I was so, everything. I'm solid on the ice. I was like, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to go skate and I'm going to win. 1,000 meters, I get out there for warm up, and I didn't feel very good. My skates I wasn't gripping the ice very well. My timing was off. I mean, our sport isn't just go out there and sprint. There's so much that people don't realize, that the feel, the ice, the conditions, everything. Right. And I didn't feel good in warm up. And so I went back in the locker room, and I started thinking, so every other competition we skate, we skate 2 races a day, 500 meters and then 1,000 maybe an hour later. The Olympics are unique. You just have the 1 race each day. So there's no prelims. There's no anything to qualify. There's not a 500 meters before. So I'm going to the line just, without having that feeling in my body that you're loose already, you're warmed up, and so I went back in the locker room. I got on a stationary bike, and I made myself hurt. I made myself feel, my body, my legs feel like I had raced a 500. And so I kind of got that in my body. I was accustomed to that. Then I went back out on the ice for my race, and I felt better. Now, the other lesson that I learned happened during the race. And if you watch this video of this race, I come up on 600 meters, 1 lap to go. I'm leading. I'm on a world record pace, which I didn't know at that very moment. But I get to the second last turn, and I slipped. Now, part of it's just fatigue, because you're getting tired. This is it's a minute and 13 second all-out sprint. So think about that. It's not a sprint in most sports, but in ours it is. Anyway, so I get the second last turn, and I slipped. In that moment that I slipped, I actually, in a split second, learned from my slip in the 500 meters. When I slipped in the turn in the 500, I tried to get it back really quickly. I tried to recover so fast, and I kind of panicked. In the 1,000, I slipped, and my mind in a second went, hold on, just relax, skate out of this. Your speed's still there. Just hold on and then accelerate out of the turn. And I was able to do that. And then I just had, a couple 100 meters left. I had to hold on. My coach, he told me before the race, he basically skated up to me and he said 2 words. He said, last 200, meaning last 200 meters is all we got to hold it together there. Because that's when I would get tired. And so that's all I thought of in that last 200 after that slip. And I held on. I looked up, and it's big WR world record next to my time. And, finally, after all of this, it's a
long road. Chill bumps, I'm sure, when you looked up. Relief.
Oh gosh, such relief. Now, having said that, there were still 30 guys that had to skate. But I knew that, the capabilities of just about everybody there. And if anything, 1 or 2 maybe had a prayer to skate as fast as I did, but I didn't care. I was so satisfied, so relieved that I finally skated to my potential at the Olympic Games, that if somebody beat me, then, congratulations. I finally did at least what I set out to do.
That's an awesome story. And to hear it from you, to tell that, I even had some chill bumps on it, looking up, and the weight, the relief that just, people are, saying, hey, is he ever going to do it? And it's not that you do it for other people, but it makes you question, what am I doing? How come I can't do it? That's a natural feeling people go through. And, I say, haters or people, that's kind of my motivation in life. People say I can't do it. I want to prove them wrong. That's not my goal, but it's part of it. It's part of my fuel. And I think that satisfying moment for you there is just, even for your family, was relief because they were there for you for the entire thing.
Everything. And that was the other thing. People say, what was it was relief. And then it was exactly that, because every time I would, my family was at, or at least part of them were at all 4 games. And with a hope, and for sure, an expectation of celebration, of celebrating a win and probably a gold medal. And it never happened. And then finally, in Lillehammer, after the tough one in the 500, when everybody was really expecting it and it didn't happen. Now we were really going to be able to celebrate, and everybody was, all together. It was, what a great night that was after that race. We had a great
Wild
time.
How the world works, right? The way it puts you in the spot where you need to be at the right moment to make sure that you get to celebrate the way you did. So congrats on that. Thanks for sharing that. So after the Olympics, right, I see that you've got 2 daughters now, Jane and Olivia.
Yep.
Congratulations on that. But I see here a 5 handicap on golf. I'm not allowed to golf with you, by the way. I'm like a 30. I can smoke cigars. I can have a few beers or seltzers. I could never shoot a 5 handicap. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's I have a good time out there, play enough. My wife Karen's a golf professional. She's a great LPGA teacher, and so I've learned a great deal from her and gotten better through the years. So it's been,
does she score better than you do?
Generally, yes.
There you go. I'm
not afraid to admit that.
Yeah, well, good. And then you've done on-air personality for the Olympics. And that's fun, right? I'm sure you get to talk about your story, but you get to watch these other kids kind of go through some of the stuff you went through. What's that like?
Yeah, no doubt. It's great fun. And, it's not as easy as people would think. There's tons and tons of preparation. Yeah, I know my sport. I can see what's happening out there, but you got to research, you got to study every night. In Olympics is kind of like Groundhog Day, because there's in long track, in our sport, there's 3 days out of the entire 17 that there's not a race. And so you have the race, then you go home, you study for the next day and do the same thing over and over, even though it's men's or women's and a different distance and different competitors. So it's a ton of work. Having said that, I love it, and I've also been able to kind of mentor a couple of the U.S. Skaters and help them along the way. So it's been pretty rewarding.
And then you've done some motivational speaking, delivered speeches. That's pretty cool. The biggest thing here also is the Dan Jansen Foundation. Let's talk about that. What's that about? I know you just celebrated last year the 25-year anniversary, not only of getting the gold medal, but that foundation. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, you know what? It's really been, I think, the most rewarding thing I've done since retiring. When Jane was even before Jane passed, there was something in me that kind of wanted to, give back when I was done with my sport. Well, then we go through all of this with Jane getting leukemia, and there it was. Now I knew what my cause would be, and I don't say that specifically leukemia, although that's part of it. But here's how it kind of morphed into what it is today. When Jane was sick, she had to have her bone marrow transplant out in Seattle. And as I said, we're from Wisconsin, Milwaukee. So she was out there for the better part of that year. Her husband and girls, even her 2-3 little ones, didn't even get to live with her for a lot of the time because she was getting treatment. But my mom and dad lived out there the whole year. I was out there donating platelets, and my other sister was a perfect match in the bone marrow. So the family's traveling back and forth, and I saw the expense that this is on families, the non-medical expenses. Those are one thing, and hopefully insurance takes most of that, but they don't always. But they don't ever cover the non-medical expenses, right. Travel, room and board, food, all of that stuff. And so what we had developed in the Dan Jansen Foundation is the Family Aid Fund. And so we help families to be able to pay their bills. We get letters weekly. They're about to turn my electricity off because I've had to stop working because my kid is being treated. And so we pay their bills, those kind of bills. And it makes a big difference. And then the other thing we did, I partnered with another organization called Cool Kids. So they're all about the kids who have cancer. My foundation's the kids and the families. So it's been a great kind of marriage. And we opened a clubhouse here in Charlotte, actually, called the Cool Kids Clubhouse in honor of Dan Jansen. And we, the kids get to go there. They spend so much time in hospitals. And so they get to go to the clubhouse and have these smile celebrations. They have movie nights where the parents can drop them off and get away, and we'll take the kids for 2-3 hours. They have end of chemo parties, and just really, it's really cool to see the kids and just enjoying themselves for a few hours. If sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah, that's so awesome. We've been a part in our business of doing some philanthropy with, Give Power, which is clean water in third world countries. We've done some stuff with the military. We've done some stuff with St. Jude's, but I love what you guys are doing there. And, I know we're part of the one of the golf things you're going to do, but I'm going to definitely get with you after this, see if we can donate some more, because I love to see what we can do for kids, and cancer is a big deal. And hearing your stories kind of made me more passionate and feeling that this is important. And people forget that as bad as the world is, if you can put a smile on somebody's face, if they're going through that, I can't even imagine weeks, months, like what your sister went through, not seeing her kids or husband, your parents living there. I mean, that's hard. And, to put a smile on somebody's face or get them to get out of the reality for a little bit and enjoy time and help them out with some of the things they're stressed of. I mean, like you said, think of these parents that can't work because they're there with their kid, but they can't pay their power bill, or they can't pay their car payment or groceries. That's what your foundation does. And I think that's really cool that you get back. It says you guys have donated over $800,000 thus far. Is that still accurate?
So it's actually better than that. So last year in October, we had a 25th anniversary of my medal and of the foundation. And it was unbelievable. We had these 8 Olympic legends in from Christy Yamaguchi to Mike Eruzione and the hockey team. And and bottom line is the evening was amazing, but we were able to get over the $1 million mark. And so that kind of was our goal. And so now we've given over $1 million away. So it's
congratulations.
Great.
That's awesome. And I know that's awesome for the families. Well, to tie it up for the listeners and the viewers out there, our man, Dan Jansen here, he had to overcome adversity. He had struggles in life, real struggles that some of us can relate to. And then his family, they all had to go through not only that transition in life, but what he was destined out to do, and the struggles and not quitting and finally getting to the point of getting that satisfaction, that relief, that joy that now has allowed him to, because of things like that, to give back over $1 million to other families out there, to motivate other people when he speaks, and to help people out that are now young kids in the Olympics, talking to them, helping and mentoring them. So, Dan, I appreciate it. I mean, you're definitely a truly American hero here. We appreciate what you did for not only the Olympics, but what you're doing now post-Olympics. We appreciate that, Dan. And thanks for coming on the show.
Great. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it very much. Look forward to seeing you down here in North Carolina this fall.
Absolutely. And guys, if you want to check out the Dan Jansen Foundation, what is the website, Dan?
So djfoundation.org, but you can also just Google Dan Jansen Foundation.
There you go. Guys, definitely do that if you want to give back for the causes there to help some of the families out with leukemia and cancer, and help out with the programs and educational for the kids that are in there. And then if you want to check out the podcast, again, trueunderdog.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, and then we've got the YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Bam!
True Underdog. Unleash